Hello and welcome to the Fulhamish YouTube channel. My name is Don Betts, and on today's video we're looking ahead to Sunday evening's clash at Goodison Park away to Everton. And joining me to look ahead to it is Thomas from Everton Newsfeed, the Toffee Blues. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, pretty good after last night's result. Getting the 5-4 win in the FA Cup was a pretty stressful one. It's been a pretty stressful week as an Everton fan with the United game last weekend as well. But yeah, all in all, pretty good. Thanks for having me on, mate.
Yeah, no worries. It was great looking forward to this game. And, Everton this season, obviously last season wasn't a good season for you guys, finishing in, usually you expect you guys to be competing at least for the top 6, top 7 European places. That didn't happen last season. But obviously this is Ancelotti's first full season. He got the likes of James Rodriguez in, Alan from Napoli. What were you thinking going into this season? And has what's happened this season matched, or would you say it's exceeded your expectations?
Well, coming off the back of last season, everyone knew that there needed to be improvement, but I think people always had faith that there would be. With Carlo Ancelotti as the manager, you're not gonna settle for a really poor season like we had, and we knew we had to recruit well in the summer. We had to basically transform a whole midfield, bringing in Abdoulaye Doucouré and Alan, and of course James Rodriguez on a free. When those signs came in, I think everyone was a lot more optimistic. Then we went on that brilliant run at the start of the season, which everyone was talking about. Then we had a bit of a dip in November. But since then, we've been absolutely brilliant. And I think with Carlo Ancelotti as the manager, it's just about time. He's going to come good eventually. He's going to be able to transform the players into a really solid squad. And it's not even just about the signings either. He's turned some of the players we've had, absolutely brilliant. Tom Davis, for the past few games, a few Everton fans have written him off. He hadn't really hit the heights that we were hoping for. But in the past few games, he's been absolutely brilliant. And Dominic CalvertLewin as well. I think he goes without saying. He's been just tremendous, and a lot of that will definitely have to do with Carlo Ancelotti. And it's the mentality, the mental strength that he brings as well. In the Spurs game last night, I mean, ridiculous game, 1-0 down, 3-1 up, then they get it back to 3-3. We're 4-3 up, then it's 4-4, then eventually it's 5-4. It takes a lot of mental strength. I mean, definitely from both sides, but we had to keep getting out, scoring those goals because we were without Calvert-Lewin for the majority of the match in the end. So we lost our main goal threat, and it's that mentality that Ancelotti's definitely brought. So yes, last season was ridiculously disappointing, and none of us could really believe where we'd ended up at the end of the season, considering Carlo Ancelotti was the manager. But then when he's been given time to bring in the players that he wanted, we've been absolutely brilliant this season.
Yeah, and main thing about Everton, ever since Ancelotti's come in, you spoke about Dominic CalvertLewin. What do you think that Ancelotti's changed about Dominic CalvertLewin? Because he had critics, and I was probably one of them before he came, and I didn't think he was as good as he is as he has been showing this season and last season. But the statistics something crazy. Like since Ancelotti's come in, the only player who's probably scored more goals than him or more goal contributions is probably someone like Harry Kane or Heung-min Son. Mm. What do you think Ancelotti has changed about Calvert-Lewin? Has he just made him focus on scoring goals, if it is put that simply?
I guess to an extent, yeah. I think obviously the massive part of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's game is his positioning. He is that kind of player that's he's just going to be in and around the box, and he's always going to be trying scoring goals, around the 6-yard box, maybe a bit further out. But I think all of his goals have come from within the box this season. So I think we knew he had it in his locker, but he really needed someone to come in and bring him out of his shell. And I mean, Ancelotti's worked with the best strikers in the world, so I guess there's no better tutorage at all. And he's been working with Duncan Ferguson as well, who's clearly helped his game a lot. He's become this really, tall physical presence, which we knew he was, but obviously he's got a few years under his belt now at the club where, he's really started to buff out a bit, and that's really helped him. And in past managers, when things were going downhill, it was basically, pumping up to Calvert-Lewin, who's going to try and run in channels and hope for a ball at the end. But the rest of the team playing better, we're much better on the ball than we ever have been. That's really helped him as well, because it takes a lot of the pressure off him to kind of just hold up the ball all the time, which obviously he still does. But under managers like Marco Silva, he was still very young, and he was being asked to shoulder a lot of the responsibility for the team, getting the goals as well as holding up the ball, making the defence work when we weren't playing brilliantly. So I think it definitely helps that the rest of the team has been playing well. It takes a bit of the pressure off him, as I said. And yeah, I think his positioning has improved massively. He's getting in those areas where, whether people argue, he's not scoring brilliant goals like Harry Kane does, but you absolutely don't need to. You see players who build a career off players scoring the goals that Calvert-Lewin does, and that's purely because it's a brilliant position. It's a much more of a mental game that he plays. So Ancelotti's definitely helped a lot. He's clearly worked with Duncan Ferguson a lot as well, and he's got a few years of experience, which has really allowed him to grow into his game. And now, we're reaping the benefits of that. Well, I think it was only less than a £1 million transfer we took a few years ago. Played in the academy for a bit, and now it's really come to fruition. So we're really happy with him.
When it comes to scoring goals, do you find it concerning when he is out? Obviously he picks up an injury against Tottenham. We don't know the full extent to how long, if he's going to be out on Sunday or how long he could be out for. Do you find it worrying that for example, you haven't got anyone else in double digits for goals? I've counted. I think your next top goal scorer has only got 6 or 7. Is that a sort of area of concern for Everton that if you're looking at the sort of percentage of goals that Calvert-Lewin has scored for you guys, that you're heavily reliant on his presence up front?
I think we're very heavily reliant on him, but I think that's because Richarlison's had a pretty poor season all in all so far. He did manage to score twice, I think, against Spurs last night. So if Richarlison can hit, the good form that we know he has been, he's been our top scorer for the past couple of seasons. So if we can get him back up to the level of performances that we know he can do, we should be all right from a goal perspective. Yes, this season he hasn't really played too well. He'll be very disappointed in himself, and I think Ancelotti has been quite vocal in saying that he just needs to improve. He needs to work harder. So Calvert-Lewin being out, we don't know how long for. He did obviously come off last night, whether that was just precautionary or because he does have a bit of an injury that might take a couple of weeks to clear up. It's always going to be a bit of a disappointment, but we've won games without him this season. It was the Wolves game we turned up. We managed to win with James Rodriguez and Gylfi Sigurdsson at striker, which is I'm not sure anyone really expected us to turn up like that. So we know that the team's very tactically flexible. So if Calvert-Lewin's not there, we don't suffer as a whole team. Yes, from a goal scoring perspective, it's not ideal. He is our main goal scorer. But if Richarlison can carry on the vein of form that he hit last night, can get that confidence back, then goal shouldn't be too much of a problem. And we do have other threats like James if he's back fit, and even Gylfi Sigurdsson, dare I say it, he can score an odd goal or two on his day. So yeah, it is tricky without Calvert-Lewin, and if he's injured for a while, we will definitely feel it. But as long as Richarlison can hit the ground running as he hasn't really done so far this season, we should be in a pretty decent position.
One area that a lot of people talk about is obviously the goalkeeper situation at Everton with Jordan Pickford and Jonas Olsen. I often feel like with Jordan Pickford, yes, he does make mistakes, but a lot of keepers do. It's just the ones that Jordan Pickford seems to get emphasised quite a lot just because he's England's number one, and Southgate, and Southgate, there's no reason for Southgate to drop him in regard to his England performances, because whenever he plays for England, he seems to not really make too many mistakes. But what is Everton's fans' sort of take on the situation? Would you be looking to get an improved number one in the summer, or are you happy with Pickford and Olsen at the moment?
I can't say I'm happy with Pickford by any means. I think he has good moments. I think he's a brilliant, reactionary keeper. But then the mistakes he makes, that's what costs you the goals at the end of the day. You can make, 3 or 4 good saves in a game, but if you're costing a goal that you shouldn't have conceded, then you kind of wipe out all that good work. And Robin Olsen, when he's been coming in as deputy, has been absolutely brilliant, but he hasn't really set the world alight. It's just the fact that we've had a few years of a keeper that's looked like a liability every time the ball comes into the box, that now we've got a keeper who's solid and doing what's expected of him, that we're all getting very excited. I think in the long term, I think we would need a new number one. Olsen is 30, I believe, or somewhere around there. John Pickford, for me, I don't think it's really ever going to work for him. Despite the fact he has hit good runs of form this season, we all know he's still got that moment in him. And opposition attackers know he's got that moment in him as well. That gamble that you take as a forward, if a keeper's out of form, then that plays on your mind as well. And it'll play on the defence's mind alongside that. So I think in the long term, we definitely do need a new number one. I think Robin Olsen's very good at doing, what's been asked of him so far. It seems like John Pickford, as soon as he's fit, though, does always come back into the side, which it's a bit disappointing because Robin Olsen has played absolutely brilliantly for the past few games. I mean, I know he conceded 4 last night and 3 against United. He did have a tricky game at Old Trafford, but last night he pulled off some brilliant saves to just keep us in it at the end of the day, when it was 1-0 and then when it was 3-3. So it's a frustrating one from an Everton fan's perspective, because we all know that Robin Olsen's probably the more solid keeper, but John Pickford is the quote-unquote number one. So when he's back fit, he does kind of have to go into the side. So I think in the long term, yes, we do need a new, star goalkeeper with Robin Olsen as the backup. But you can't just keep signing keepers as well. I mean, it all depends if anyone would want to sign John Pickford, which I wouldn't be surprised if they don't after some of the mistakes he's made. But I like John Pickford a lot. I don't want to see him struggle as much as he is. But for me, I think Robin Olsen's just the better goalkeeper.
Yeah, and if we look at the reverse fixture, it was sort of when Fulham were just turning a corner. We weren't conceding goals 3 or 4 and for no reply. And it didn't start well with you guys getting very early goal. Obviously, it was the early kickoff on the BBC. Ended up finishing 3-2, and it was a good away win for you guys, and it was a disappointing result for us because we did play well in the game and we had chances, but you guys ended up being the more clinical of the two. Do you think with that quick start? Do you think that's something that Everton might look to take confidence from again to try if they know if they get that early goal against Fulham, it will be quite hard for our side to get a good result?
Definitely, yeah. Especially now we are the home side. Whether that has too much of an advantage these days, we don't really know. But our problem has been in the past few games. We've actually started very slowly. It's been disappointing against United. We conceded quite early on, and we didn't really grow into the game until the second half. And against Spurs, we conceded that really early goal, and we were quite fortunate to score 3 in 7 minutes, which sounds ridiculous to say out loud. But the past few games, we have started quite slowly. But I think with teams like yourselves, the teams in the relegation battle, the first goal is always massive in the game. Whether that's a mentality thing, a quality thing, I'm not sure, because Fulham, you really do have some quality players. I don't think it's through a lack of quality on the pitch. Maybe it's just a confidence thing. I'm not too sure. I can't say that I watched too many of your games, but I think it was evident last game that those early goals really set us up for the rest of the game. Bear in mind, we were quite poor for the rest of the game from there. You probably played better in the second half than us, which is, ridiculous from our perspective. We were on a very good run, and all of a sudden we go to Craven Cottage and we do kind of struggle. So I agree that if we get the early goal here, we should be seeing the rest of the game out. However, I won't be surprised if we don't get the early goal here, because we've been starting the past few games quite poorly. But yeah, I think it's important in these games especially to get the early goal, get the first goal, and then play a normal game from there.
Obviously, we spoke about it off air that at Goodison Park is probably where Fulham have their worst away record as a team. I think it's 22 defeats, no wins, no losses. But if you look at this Everton team, and we do want to break that duck, or just make sure we don't lose the game, where is the areas of this Everton team that you think, if you're looking at Fulham, we could really cause them some problems?
Well, at the moment, I'd say that's quite tricky to say, because even though we've had a couple of individual errors, we've had a couple of individual poor performances, the team's really pulled together and kind of seeing out games. I mean, we missed Yerry Mina against Manchester United, but then Yerry Mina came in against Spurs and he made a few mistakes that led to goals. So it's a weird one to say. You never really know who might, not turn up brilliantly on the day. I think if you're combative in midfield, if we don't have, the likes of Decore and Davis and Allen in there, you could do well. But I think Allen, in theory, should be back for this game. He's been injured for quite a while, and Decore and Davis are playing really well. But I think if you can frustrate Richarlison, that'll do you the world of good as well, because if Calvert-Lewin is injured and Richarlison's not really getting on the ball, he's not getting the service he likes, we know maybe sometimes in games his head goes up slightly and he doesn't really focus for the rest of the game. And if he's going to be on major goal threat, if you can keep him quiet, then we will probably have some major issues. But other than that, the team has been really solid all in all, apart from a couple of individual errors that that it's not a runabout for him, as I mentioned with Yerry Mina. He's been one of our best centre halves this season, and all of a sudden he makes a few mistakes in that Spurs game that led to a ridiculous scoreline in the end. So I think keeping Richarlison quiet will be the main job for the Fulham defence, purely because if Calvert-Lewin is out for a long time, you will be your major goal threat. And if Jordan Pickford comes back in, I mean, there's always we always run the risk of him making a mistake leading to a goal. So I'd say probably Richarlison is the main one, but if Pickford's back in, then we all know what he could sometimes do.
Yeah, and as we've been mentioning, in the reverse fixture when Tom Clark came on and spoke to us, he explained about that Lookman will want to prove a point against Everton, and maybe not as much of Anthony Robinson's case, but Ademola Lookman. And what have you made of Ademola Lookman? The sparks we've seen from this season, is this the ability that Everton fans always knew that was in the player?
I think that word sparks pretty much sums up Ademola Lookman from what we saw. There were moments where he was an absolutely brilliant player and we thought he had plenty of potential, but I'm not sure his head was ever fully at the club. He then went to RB Leipzig. It worked well for him there, but then when he joined on a permanent, it went horribly wrong for him. So I think the definition of Ademola Lookman as a player is, sparks of really good play, but then he has just some moments that you can't really understand. I mean, I remember that penalty earlier on in the season, not really sure what he was trying to do there. He has these moments where it makes me think that he's never really going to make it at the top level. Under Allardyce, I don't blame him for wanting to leave. Allardyce was basically refusing to play him. But if Big Sam saw something on the training ground that he didn't like, which clearly maybe is a mentality thing, then maybe that is the problem. But Lookman is a player who has bags of potential, but maybe it's never just going to quite work out for him. He will have good runs. Don't get me wrong, he is still a player with a lot of ability, a lot of talent. But would he ever put that together for a complete season and really be that top player? I'm not too sure. I'd like to see him prove me wrong. I mean, I wanted to see him do well at Everton. It really didn't work out for him, and then it didn't work out for him in Germany, and now he's obviously with yourself. So I think, yes, you are going to see flashes of brilliance from Lookman, but you're probably never going to see it over an entire season. And I think he will want to prove a point. I think he left Everton thinking the club, he was quite hard done by, which I can't really understand. But yeah, good player on his day. But is he ever going to, put those constant back-to-back performances in where he's going to be carrying you through games? Probably not. But I mean, that's yet to be seen.
And if you are to predict starting 11 for how Ancelotti will set you guys up on Sunday evening, what are you going to go with?
Well, it's a tricky one to predict Ancelotti at the moment, just because he likes to rotate his defence. So we have had a couple of injuries, but I'll say Robin Olsen in goal just because Pickford was meant to be out for a few weeks, and I'm not sure he'll be back necessarily yet. He was meant to be having a fitness test, so I'm not sure if he's going to be 100% of whether Ancelotti will risk him in a few days' time. Left back Lucas Digne, I think that's a no-brainer. He's the only left back we've got at the club, well, senior left back anyway, and he's been absolutely brilliant. He'll probably stick with Yerry Mina and Michael Keane in the centre of defence, despite the fact that Yerry Mina had a pretty poor game against Spurs. And then right back, I'd probably have to go for Mason Holgate purely because I prefer to see Ben Godfrey, who's been an absolute revelation. He's been absolutely brilliant for us this season. It's probably his turn to maybe get a bit of a rest. So it's basically either or with those two, despite the fact that Coleman did end up playing last night, coming on as a substitute. It is Holgate or Godfrey normally who are favoured to play in that position. But that's a fairly flexible position. You could see any player there, really. Decore in the midfield, 100%. He's our absolute engine. He was a brilliant signing in the summer. Exactly what we needed, and he was brilliant last night against Spurs. And then it all depends if Allen's back. I'd imagine he's probably not going to be. He might feature on the bench just because he's had quite a long-term injury now, and he has been struggling with fitness. So I'd probably stick with Tom Davies. And then after that, it really just depends who's fit, really. James Rodriguez was injured for the Spurs game, played brilliantly against United. So he could be back. I think he was meant to be having a fitness test as well. So he was kind of on the verge of coming back into the side, and I'd imagine he probably will. So in that instance, I'd probably have to go with Gylfi Sigurdsson as well in the midfield. Andre Gomez was injured last night. We only managed to have 5 outfield players on the substitute bench because we just had so many injuries. And then I'd probably start with Richarlison through the middle. Of course, we do have Josh King, who I'm sure you know all about after the deadline day, this drama that happened basically, but we haven't seen him start yet, so maybe he won't start this game. So the front line's also pretty tricky to predict. It's not a very straight answer I'm giving you here, but that's the thing with Ancelotti. You never really know what he's absolutely going to do. I think we'll definitely start with Richarlison because I think Calvert-Lewin will be injured for this one, or he won't be risked anyway. So I think it really depends who's back, but I think if everyone's fit, I'd probably like to see Josh King, Richarlison and James Rodriguez, but will Josh King go straight in? Maybe not. Will James Rodriguez be injured? Maybe. Then you're likely to see maybe an Alex Iwobi on the wing as well. And Bernard managed to come on yesterday. So it really is kind of up in the air about who's going to play up front. But the defensive midfield is pretty straightforward. And other than that, it's very much see who's fit on the day and see who Ancelotti wants to play.
Yeah. And if I'm going to push you for a score prediction, what are you going to go with?
Tricky one, that one. I never seem to get score predictions right. They're always very, very difficult. I'd like to see a 2-0 Everton win. Because yes, I do think we'll score goals definitely, and I do think we'll win the game. But the clean sheet is something that I'd really like to see from the defence. Keep it solid for the whole game. Just because you are on a relegation fight, that doesn't mean it's going to be a simple game by any means, as you proved at Craven Cottage. So I go for a 2-0 Everton win. I'm not expecting loads of goals. I'm probably expecting a slightly open game because you do like to play quite attacking, expansive football, which we will look to exploit. So yeah, 2-0 Everton win. I'll go for.
Thanks very much, Thomas, for joining us. Thomas, obviously from the Everton newsfeed, the Toffee Blues. Obviously, I'm going to be going on their channel for a preview ahead of Sunday's game, chatting all things Fulham. Thomas, do you want to let everyone know where they can find that?
Yeah, it'll be on our YouTube channel, the Toffee Blues, or just check out our Twitter, which is at Everton Newsfeed. We will be up, we post loads of updates all the time about what videos are going up. So definitely check out Twitter or just check out the YouTube channel if you'd like.
Well, this has been the Fulhamish YouTube channel. This has been our preview for Everton versus Fulham at Goodison Park on Sunday evening. I've been Dom Betts. I'll see you guys next time.